Did you know there are 30 million evangelical Christians in the United States of America that do not vote even for the office of president? We are Million Voices, and our heart is to change that today. We are joined by Bill Federer, a personal hero, one of the nation's premier historians. Thank you, Bill, for joining us. How are you?
It's great to be with you.
Well, I'm so glad to have you. So we had a little switch up. You ended up being in D.C. Can you tell us a little bit about where you are and what you're doing?
Well, I'm at a meeting of conservative leaders, and we're meeting in the Ritz-Carlton, Pentagon City, and we just had President Trump speak to us, along with the head of the Homeland Security, and giving updates, and it was just a tremendous amount of enthusiasm, a number of issues that are concerning regarding the election. But it is one of these situations where you realize this is the most important election of our life, that if the president does not get back in, the radical agenda that is proposed by the other party will totally transform America into a socialist state where your life is being controlled by the government.
You know, it's so interesting. People that are of the left, when you say transform the country, they say woohoo, because they are convinced and have convinced others that the country is so wicked. But that's not true. That's why we have you on. You're such an excellent historian, and I definitely want to get to that. But before we do, can you share a little bit about what President Trump said about the mail-in voting? Because boy, that's the next thing we get to tackle in 2020, mail-in voting.
Right. So there is absolutely no way to make it secure. That it's different from absentee ballots, because absentee ballots is the person requests the ballot and then it's sent to them. They sign it before witnesses and then they send it back. What's happening with the mail-in voting is these different states are sending out millions of ballots. The number is 51 million. And then some of the states are sending out automatic absentee ballots of 40 million. So 95 million ballots are being sent out. And then when you realize that the first class mail has a 10% of the mail is delayed. And so that means people will be delayed in getting them. But then when they turn around and mail them back, there'll be 10% of them delayed. That in itself can turn the election. There's no way to, some of the states do not require you to sign the ballot. And even if you do sign it, they don't check it against any other signature they have of you. Some states have it so that you don't even have to have postage. And so there's no way of getting a postmark to know if the ballot was turned in after the election. And then there's no way to make sure that the ballots weren't sent to one neighborhood and not another. There's no audit to make sure of that. And it's just, there's one of the strategies that has been floating around is that if they recently had a primary election in, I think, New Jersey, but it took 6 weeks for them to finish counting the mail-in ballots. And they said that that's just one state with one primary. And so if you magnify that, it could take 6 weeks to months to count the general election. So instead of it being election night, we all know the results. It could be stretched out for months. And there is a federal law that if there is not a decision made on the election by the end of the year, the Speaker of the House automatically becomes the acting U.S. president. So there's a thought that they may intentionally drag out the counting of these ballots to the end of the year in order to do this other plan. So a lot of things are up in the air, and this has never been done before. That you would experiment on something of this magnitude. It's not like we've done mail-in voting before. This is an experiment that's been untried. many of the post office machines are not designed to process and sort the size of the ballots, and so they get kicked out. And then they point out that when there's a contested election and they go back through the ballots and they'll decide if they're not filled out just right, they throw some of them out. They said that on the average, about 30% of mail-in ballots get thrown out. So the best way to make sure your vote counts is to in person go to the polling place and vote. And if you can go to the grocery store, and if you can go to the Walgreens or the CVS, the pharmacy, you can go and vote. And anyway, so a lot of sobering things.
Okay, well, so this is my question. Who is they? Who is doing this?
Well, the Democrat Party, to a large extent, that they want to have it, in many cases, be where there's no identification to vote. So you have an ID to get on an airplane. You have an ID for people to buy cigarettes or booze, but yet the most important thing that you have is your vote as far as the country goes, and yet they're wanting to file lawsuit after lawsuit to not require people to show ID to vote. They say, well, it could be intimidating, and everyone knows that that's just a cover to do voter fraud. And so you have Tom Fitton with Judicial Watch gave a presentation at this event that I'm at, and he's been suing Los Angeles and these different counties all around the country. Why? Because they have millions of extra names on their voter rolls of people that have moved out of the city. And yet they leave them on the voter rolls so that on election day, they can do what they call walking cash, where they go into poor neighborhoods and they give them a name and $20, and they say, go vote with this name. And then they put them on a bus, take them to another polling place and say, here's another name, here's another $20, go in and vote under this person's name. And they would do that. That's your typical, what they call walking cash arrangement. But now with the mail-in voting, if anybody's moved and you still get mail at your house for the person that lived at your house before you, that they say that for those that rent lists to send out mailers to, if you're like a business and you want to buy a list, the worst list you can rent is the post office list. It's the most inaccurate list because they'll keep these bad names and addresses on, and they'll send the mailers out. So there's a whole lot of potential of untracked ballots. But I mean, there is hope, and the hope is we all need to get involved. It's going to take every one of us to double up and get everybody we know to get out and vote to make up for any potential fraud that they would try to do. And we're all doing it for the good Lord. The proverb says a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And so if we're a good man or woman, we want to leave to our kids and grandkids a country with as much freedom as we've inherited. And so it's our duty to be able to make sure that we do the best we can to pass this great country on to them.
Well, we can absolutely vote, and we absolutely should. What else could we do to prevent this kind of corruption? Is there anything that just the average American Christian person that loves the United States could do to fight against what you just described with the cash, the $20 and the 95 million ballots? And what do we do?
Well, the one thing is bring light to the situation. As long as they can keep it in the dark, they have a better chance to get away with it. So it's putting pressure on politicians, saying, what are you doing to secure the vote? It's telling the media that you want news reports on how are they going to secure the vote, that you want to, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and the politicians usually react to the public pressure. And so it's up to us to put pressure on them, and then use all of our social media influence to try to make an issue out of this. From what I've read already, that the Democrat Party is already sending lawyers to hundreds of different jurisdictions, already preparing to file lawsuits to challenge whatever election results are going on. So we need to put pressure on the politicians and elected officials saying, what are you doing to make sure that this election is accurate?
Okay, so I just heard you say we can post this video, get the word out. We can tell everybody that there's attempted fraud going on an historic level, correct?
Oh, I mean, I ran for Congress 3 times back about 20 years ago. And I remember talking to a postal worker. Now, there's tremendous postal workers out there, but this particular one said, well, you have to vote Democrat because Republicans want to shut down the post office. And I responded by saying, I've been a Republican my whole life. I've never heard a Republican candidate say they want to shut down the post office. He said, well, I read it in our postal worker union's newspaper. It's like, oh, okay, that's what they've been telling you. And then he said, well, if there's a candidate they don't like, they leave that candidate's mailers under the counter for a couple extra days. So they get delivered after the election. And I've talked to a number of candidates that they've had that happen. Tony Perkins, the head of the Family Research Council, said that he ran for state senate in Louisiana. His mailers were delivered 2 weeks after the election. So there's a certain amount of leeway that takes place. There's photographs of ballots being left on the floor of apartment buildings. When I ran in St. Louis, the St. Louis had their voter rolls. And research was done, and 30 people lived at one address. And if you drove up to that address, it was a parking lot that the city had torn down the apartment building, and the city built a parking lot, but the city left the former residents as still living there under that address. Now, why is that important? Because then they can do the voter fraud. And now the mail-in ballots that don't even need to be signed, or if they are signed, they don't have to be matched with a previous signature, that you can take the 30 names that used to live there and have somebody forge them and drop them off, and there's no way to track. And so it's a serious thing. And but again, jurisdiction-wise, we are responsible to do what is in our sphere. The Lord will hold us each accountable for what we're able to do. And so we need to do everything we're able to do. I tell people, if a kid is acting up on the sidewalk, you're not responsible for that kid's actions unless it's your kid. Then you're responsible. So you're responsible to, you see, oh, there's so much stuff going on in the world and I can't do it all, but you can do a little bit. And you're responsible to God to do the little bit that you're able to do.
So we should get the word out, share this video, and then call, email our congressmen, our senators, and say, we need you to secure our vote. Like, we need you to watch for this. Is that what you're saying we can do?
Yes. And, call the news media and say, look, there's so much potential for mail-in voter fraud. What are you doing about this? And we need to have stories on it. We need to make a public issue over it.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Mr. Federer. It really is so important. I don't even have good words for how important it is. I appreciate you. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit history. Let's talk the United States of America. I'm just going to dive right into it. People say we're a democracy. We are not. I know John Adams said that a pure democracy, he's never seen one that didn't strangle itself, choke itself, and commit suicide. And so we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. Can you explain to our viewers what the difference is and what does that mean?
Right. So I wrote a book. It's called Who is the King in America? And I give an overview of all of recorded history. So writing was invented around 3,000 or 4,000 BC. Sumerian cuneiform or clay tablets in the Mesopotamian Valley between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. So from the beginning of the invention of writing, around 3,000 or 4,000 BC till now, the most common form of government is what? It's kings. Now they go by different names: Pharaoh, Caesar, Kaiser, Sultan, Tsar, Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan. The name changes, but power wants to concentrate into the hand of one person. It's like the Lord of the Rings, that movie where Gandalf tells Frodo, always remember, Frodo, the ring is trying to get back to its master. It wants to be found. Power wants to concentrate. And it goes back to human nature. St. Augustine called it libido dominandi, the lust to dominate. So you have Cain killing Abel. You put some kids in a playpen, one of them takes the rattle from the others. They're a little older, you put some kids on a playground, one of them is the bully hogging the ball. You put some junior high girls in a clique, and one of them is the diva. You put some people in the woods, one of them is an Indian chief. You put them in an inner city, one of them is a gang leader. And all a king is a glorified gang leader. And as the centuries go on, the kingdoms get bigger because with military advancements, you can kill more people. So instead of killing with a rock, you kill with a bronze weapon or an iron weapon or a phalanx spear or a scimitar sword or gunpowder. The weapon changes, but it's that same fallen nature of Cain, kill, and Abel, until finally the King of England had the largest empire that planet Earth had ever seen. The sun never set on the British Empire. He had all of India, Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, British Guyana, Canada, and America. And America's founders decided they did not want this globalist king telling us what to do, so they broke away and flipped it and made the people the king. So kings have subjects who are subjected to their will. Democracies and republics, the people are the king. The word citizen means co-king. It's a Greek word which means co-king. So democracy, republic. So democracy is in Athens. That's where it came from. They had 6,000 citizens, and every day, every citizen had to go to the marketplace and talk about every issue. And if you did not keep up with every issue every day, you were called an idiotus, an idiot. And now a republic is where you take care of your family and your farm, and you have someone in your place that goes to the market every day and talks politics. They are your representative. So a republic is where the people are king, ruling through representatives. So we pledge allegiance to the flag and to the republic. We're basically pledging allegiance to us being in charge of ourselves. And so when somebody protests the flag, what they're saying is, I don't want to be the king anymore. I protest this system where I participate in ruling myself. It's like, really? Now, what we actually have in America is a constitutional republic. What's that? Well, in Greece had a democracy, Rome had a republic, but in Rome, their representatives, they were called senators, they had 600 of them, they were hereditary. They went back to the founders of the Roman Republic, and those original families, they ended up passing along the title to, but so they represented their area, but they were not elected. So in America, we democratically elect our representatives. So it's a little hybrid. We mix a little Greece with a little Rome, so to speak. But even the representatives cannot do whatever they want. They are limited by something called a constitution, right? So they have guidelines, and we have timetables so that the congressman every 2 years, senators every 6 years, and president every 4 years, and we limit what they can and cannot do. So we have a democratically elected constitutional republic. That's what we have in America. But the bottom line is the people are still the king, right? And so this is why America is unique. Where all the other countries are top down, America is bottom up. It's we the people. And we, even Abraham Lincoln said, the people of this country are the rightful masters of both Congresses and courts. Now, it's a blessing, but it's a responsibility, and a serious responsibility. Why? Because if things go wrong, it's your fault. So in ancient Israel, they had kings, and the prophet would come to the king and say, you better do right or God's going to judge you. Well, guess what? In America, the people are the king. And so if things are going wrong, God is going to hold us, the people, the king, responsible. So if they're teaching stuff to little kids that Jesus wouldn't teach, sort of interesting, they have a strategy to guilt trip Christians into being more Christian than Christ. You say, what? So yeah, they come to you and say, if you're really Christian, you will tolerate this LGBT agenda being taught to the little kids. Question, would Jesus teach that agenda? Well, Jesus said in the beginning, God made them male and female. So obviously Jesus believed in male and female, and so he would not teach the LGBT agenda. So their attitude is if you're really Christian, you'll let them teach something that Jesus would never teach. So in other words, if you're really Christian, you won't act like Christ. That's their strategy. And a whole lot of people are like, okay, I'm really Christian. I got to tolerate this. It's like Jesus says, if you allow one of these little ones that believes in me to stumble, it's better that a millstone be put around your neck and you be thrown in the depths of the sea. So if you're sitting there watching your TV and say, oh, I don't want to bother voting, and they end up getting in and they're teaching the kids all this stuff, and if those kids turn away from the Lord, Jesus is going to hold you accountable. So in America, the people are the king. It's a nice blessing, but it's a serious responsibility, because if it goes wrong, it's your fault and God will hold you accountable.
Oh my goodness, that's absolutely excellent. Thank you so much. I just heard you say power likes to concentrate, but the brilliance of the United States is that power is spread out over many, 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 and it's important for the many to exercise their power responsibly. Is that what you said?
Yeah, if you think of it as a spectrum, one side is total government, the other side is no government. Total government, power concentrates into the hands of one person, and like a black hole, it sucks in all the power, and he rules by fear. You do what the king, the party leader, the dictator, the chairman Mao, you do what that person at the top says, or you disappear, right? So they rule by fear. The other side is no government. That would be anarchy, unless each citizen is taught the law. And so in ancient Israel's case, the Levites taught everyone the law. A way to explain that is, imagine your iPhone or your, Android phone, and you have a GPS app that gives you directions. And so imagine, instead of a GPS app, you have a behavioral app on your phone. It tells you how to act. Instead of turn left 50 yards ahead, it says, don't steal that. Don't lose your temper at this person, right? And the ancient Levite priests were the computer geeks that help you to download this app. Line upon line, precept upon precept, go to Google Store, Apple Play, you press this button here, there. And so they help you to download this. So everybody now has the law memorized on their heart. They have this internal app, so to speak. But the big question is, why would you follow it? What would motivate you to follow an internal moral? Israel had the key ingredient. There is a God who is watching everyone. He wants you to be fair, and he's going to hold you accountable in the future. So you're about to steal, nobody's around, you can get away with it, and then you think, God is watching me. He wants me to be fair. He's going to hold me accountable in the future. Maybe I should hesitate stealing. And it creates something in your head called a conscience. If everybody in the country really believes this, you can maintain complete order with no police. Maximum liberty, right? But if you get rid of this God, all you got is a bunch of rules that some old men made up. Why follow them? Some will, some won't. Those that won't are going to yield to their selfish side, and they're going to start robbing, stealing, killing, looting, and it's going to turn into lawlessness,
Wow.
and you get a King Saul.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Mr. Federer, thank you. I wish we had hours upon hours upon hours. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being with us on Million Voices.
I have one more thought, if I could squeeze it in.
Yes.
In America, the people are the king. Statistics show that 65% of Americans identify themselves as Christian. 20 years ago, it was 90%, but 65% is still a majority. So if the people are the king and 65% of them are Christian, that makes the pastors counselors to the king, right? They're Christian, they go to church, they listen to their pastors, and so the pastors have the king in their pew every Sunday. Back at Constantine, 313 AD, switched the Roman Empire to being Christian. And then you go to 379 AD, and you have a Christian Roman emperor named Theodosius. And Emperor Theodosius goes to church in Milan, Italy, and the pastor is St. Ambrose, Bishop Ambrose. Could you imagine what it would be like being Bishop Ambrose and having the Roman emperor in your church on Sunday? Guess what? That's exactly what we have in America. In America, the people are the king, and 65% of them are Christian, which means they go to church, which means the pastors have the king sitting in their pew. And there's two kinds of pastors. One tells the king to go to sleep, shirk your responsibility, don't wake up, don't be involved, just think about your own relationship with God and forget everything else. And another set of pastors throws ice water on the king and says, wake up, you don't just have the right to vote in America, you're going to be held accountable to God for what happens in America.
Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you. AmericanMinute.com is my website. I have a book. It's called Who is the King in America? And it's you. And so just want to thank you and that, every generation has a crisis. And whether it's Attila the Hun or whether it's bubonic plague or whether it's Genghis Khan, there's always going to be a crisis. And the crisis of the era is an opportunity for the individuals living during that era to respond, either being part of the problem, ignore the problem, or be part of the answer, ministering God's love to a hurting world, standing up for righteousness, defending the defenseless. And so instead of saying, oh, there's a problem, let's just wait for Jesus to come back. No. The problem is there so that you can get a chance to reveal who you really are. I tell people, God knows Abraham's heart, but he wanted to see Abraham take his son Isaac to the top of Mount Moriah. God knows what's in your heart. Imagine a guy sitting on a couch watching TV and you ask him, when was the last time you told your wife you love her? No, it's been a long time, but she knows my heart. It's like, okay, when was the last time you did anything to show your wife you love her? It's been a long time, but she knows my heart. It's like, dude, we need to have a talk. It's like people say, God knows my heart. Yes, he does know your heart. And he wants to hear some words out of your mouth and he wants to see some actions, right? So the crisis of the era is an opportunity for us to respond with the gospel and with the love of Jesus and to get out there and do something. And he shows each of us something different because we're all made different, but there's something for us to say and do, each one of us to address and minister his love to this generation.
Visit millionvoices.org today for more resources. We will be posting more videos just like this one from thought leaders across the nation. Each of the videos connects to one of our 10 guiding truths. Today, we talked about freedom. Please go to millionvoices.org, click on Guiding Truths, and get more content that matters to you. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Follow us, share the videos with your family and your friends, and remember, your voice matters.